Everybody, welcome in. Thank you for joining us this evening for our Homeowner Historic Tax Credit Workshop. We're always excited to have you, and this is perfect timing just as construction season is kind of kicking up and the weather's allowing us to do our home projects. So I'm happy to see you all here. My name is Emily Jarnot. I'm a preservation planner and Niagara Falls liaison with Preservation Buffalo Niagara. And this workshop is brought to you in partnership with Preservation Studios. And I'd really like to take a minute and introduce our panelist of experts for this evening and who's going to be talking you through the historic tax credit process. And at the end, we'll also have time for Q&A with Zach Salman from SHPO. So it's always a treat to have him here. So our panelists are as follows. We have Tom Yots, who's the founder of Preservation Studios and the director of municipal services. Thanks for joining us, Tom. We have Hailey Wright, preservation planner with Preservation Studios, and she is also on the board of the Amherst Historic Preservation Commission. And we have Zach Salman, who is a historic preservation technical specialist with the New York State Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation. Thank you guys all so much for joining us this evening and presenting on the wonderful world of homeowner historic tax credits.
Thank you so much, Emily. Just some housekeeping to go over the agenda for tonight. We'll go through a brief introduction, and then we'll jump into local landmarking, the historic tax credit program, eligibility, qualifications, QREs, some examples, and then the application process and what that looks like. And with that, I'll hand it over to Tom.
Hi, I'd like to welcome everybody on behalf of Preservation Studios. A little special welcome to Janice Claudio and any of her colleagues who are there from Greenport, Long Island. Greenport is a charming little community on the far eastern end of Long Island, and they are really big into historic preservation. And we mentioned to them about this, and so they're joining us in it. But on behalf of Preservation Studios, I do welcome everyone here. Preservation Studios is a full-service historic preservation consulting firm that I founded in 2002 when I got a master's degree in architecture from the SUNY Buffalo School of Architecture and Planning. The plan was for me to work by myself.
This meeting is being recorded.
The plan was for me to work by myself, but then the historic tax credits really exploded in the as a result, Preservation Studios expanded and grew as well. And now there are a ton of us, and we work across the state. We work in Manhattan, we work on Long Island, we work in neighboring states. We have an office in Portland, Oregon, another one in North Carolina. And my wife and I spend the winters here in California, which is where I am right now. And we also do some work here when I'm here. So I want to welcome all of you, as I say, on behalf of Preservation Studios. Our main office is in the Hamlin Park Historic District in Buffalo, and we provided this service that we're doing today pro bono to our neighbors because they were so welcoming to us when we moved there, and we said to them, we can help you with the historic preservation homeowner credit because they're a little neighborhood on Buffalo's east side, and they have 1,457 eligible properties in that neighborhood, and they work very hard to maintain the historic integrity of their neighborhood. And so we decided if we could do this for them, we could do it for other parts of the city of Buffalo, and then from that it expanded to Niagara Falls, and then further into Western New York, and now we just do it wherever anyone is interested in having us do it. I want to talk to you about one other thing. We are primarily a historic preservation tax credit consulting company, although we do other pieces as well. But we worked on some buildings that if you're a Western New Yorker, you would be familiar with. We did the Electric Tower, the Packard Building, and more recently we did the Mattress Factory lofts, which is where Preservation Studios office is and where my wife and I have a loft apartment back in Buffalo ourselves. The Black Rock Freight House, the Monroe, the former Record Theater, that got a lot of really big PR when that was done, and working on some other projects that you would be familiar with. On the homeowner tax credit side, we've done some very interesting ones with that as well. And right now I'm working with a client, Haley and I are working with a client at a historic apartment building, 800 West Ferry in Buffalo. And she has probably one of the most historically significant apartments in the city of Buffalo. I won't go into why it's that way, but I can tell you that it really is. And her window rehab alone was like $100,000. So the historic preservation tax credit was a really important thing for her in the rehab of this condominium. And I will say, as part of this, is working with Zach closely on this one because there were so many things that we needed to get approved. You can rest assured that if you have any questions at all, not only will Zach help you, but he'll help you almost immediately. So that I can tell you, you should look forward to. One last thing about what we do, we did do the consulting for the Buffalo AKG when the Albright Knox was expanded. As you know, there are 2 historic buildings on the site, and Preservation Studios did the historic preservation consulting, getting them their approvals from the state and local level. I want to move on to something that, while it isn't totally part of what we're doing in this homeowner credit, it is something that is very significant to historic properties, and it's one of the reasons that communities do end up qualifying for the historic tax credit, and that's local designation. Local designation differs from National Register designation. Local designation is something that's done through the local municipality. Generally, they set up what's called a certified local government. They have Historic Preservation Commission, or in the case of the City of Buffalo, Preservation Board. They review projects. They designate properties. There's a lot of advantages to this. And if you are in a historic district that is not a local historic district, you might want to consider what those advantages are. Or if you're in an area that wants to become a historic district, that's especially important to consider local designation. First of all, through New York State, there is a program called 444A, and it allows municipalities to offer exemptions on any taxation of the improvements done on a property. So if you do a project on your house and it improves your house, your assessment goes up. Well, if it's a historically designated house and you're in one of the communities that does 444A, then you can see on the screen how that's done. You don't get any increase for the first 5 years, and then it goes up. It starts to increase as it goes up until eventually, after 10 years, you do have a full assessment. But that allows someone who's doing historic preservation work on their property to have that additional benefit, which is another very helpful thing. Haley, if we can go on to the next screen too, the other advantages of local landmarking is it protects properties. When I said to you there were 1,457 properties in Hamlin Park that qualified for the National Register, Hamlin Park is on Buffalo's east side, where massive and extensive demolition occurred. Anyone who knows Buffalo knows that. The fruit belt, the percentage of buildings wiped out in the fruit belt is heartbreaking. Well, that didn't happen in Hamlin Park. And part of the reason it didn't happen in Hamlin Park is because they had local designation. Here's an example of what could have been and didn't. And that was in Niagara Falls, the home of shredded wheat. The central portion of that building that you see in the postcard on the left was the administration building for the shredded wheat company that was in Niagara Falls for over 100 years. When they left the administration building, it was in very good condition, a beautiful building with terrazzo floors, marble bathrooms, beautiful staircases. And it was purchased by Niagara County Community College, and that's where the community college started in the 1960s. Well, when they built a suburban campus, they left that and put it up for sale, and it was purchased by a developer who decided that he wanted what he called a shovel-ready site. And he demolished that building. And if you look to the right, you will see that shovel-ready site. He demolished the building in the late 1970s or to early 1980s. That photo that was taken on the right was just taken about maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So nothing was ever built there. So it's still waiting for that for the shovel-ready site. But if that had been locally landmarked, that building could have been saved. giving you another example, just one more on this to explain, and that's this building. This is what made Hamlin Park into a local historic district. This was a rectory for St. Vincent de Paul Church, which was a beautiful Byzantine revival church across the street, which fortunately has been saved. Canisius College owned this, and they announced that they were going to demolish this. And they had demolished a lot of properties that they owned in Hamlin Park, and Hamlin Park residents were not happy about that. So they fought it. They created a local historic district. They designated this house. So this house was not demolished. And today it is functioning well. It works with one of the programs for Canisius College. That sidewalk that you see on either side of it goes into the little charming little quadrangle in the back. When I'm home, I walk my dog over there all the time. It's beautiful. But if that house was gone, it would have not been the same. So this is the value of local landmarking. If your historic district that you're in is not locally landmarked, talk to your commission or your preservation board and tell them you would like them to investigate that, because that is something that will benefit you in many ways. Okay, Haley, thank you for letting me do that.
Of course. Yeah, and just to know, a lot of times these certified local governments aren't even aware that this was adopted into their code at some point. So like Tom said, it's always great to check with them because the code might already be there. Okay, so just to get into the tax credit program, we'll be going over the historic homeowner rehabilitation credit that offers a state income tax equal to 20% of those qualified rehabilitation expenses. And those include your repairs, maintenance, and upgrades to your historic home. A question we receive quite often is my home eligible? So there are many maps available. So just to go over some specific ones in Buffalo, we have Parkside, Linwood, Hamlin Park, Allentown, Broadway Fillmore, and many more. In Buffalo, we do also have some that are both local and national registered historic districts. If you ever have a question regarding your home, wondering if it qualifies or not, just let us know and we'll be able to help. All right, so the qualifications. This first one here is very important. So all of those projects must be approved before work begins on these projects. The applicant must own and live within the home, and the house must be listed on the state and national registers of historic places or contributing within a historic district. And then last but not least, the rehab expenses must be $5,000 or more, and then just with a minimum of 5% of that work being on the exterior during each of those projects. All right, what are QREs? So those are the qualified rehabilitation expenditures. These are those incentives, including things like roofing, HVAC, flooring, gutters, mostly anything that is attached to your home when rehabbing. And Tom, I will pass it back to you to go over the owner occupied with commercial use.
Most of the properties that deal with the homeowner tax credit are single-family homes that are the primary residence for someone. And it's pretty easy. In that case, it's a 20% tax credit based on the QREs. So if you're doing a $20,000 roof job on your house, you get 20%, which is $4,000. But some properties, like the one that you see in this photograph, are not just a residential property. They also have a commercial piece to it. This house was built in 1913 for James G. Marshall, who was one of the founders of Union Carbide. The family lived in the house until the 1970s, and then it was sold to a church that used it as a rectory. During that period, the house declined quite a bit. And in the spirit of full disclosure, my wife and I purchased that house in 1993, and we restored the house and rehabilitated it into a bed and breakfast. So as a bed and breakfast, we didn't live in that entire house. We lived in a portion of that house. If the homeowner credit had been available at that time, we would have been able to get a tax credit based on the portion of the house that we lived in. And it was a pretty simple thing to calculate, because in order to do our income tax, we had to put down what percent of that house was residential and what percent of it was the commercial uses, the bed and breakfast. But to make it easier, let's just say that we lived in 50% of it, which we did not. We lived in considerably less than that. We were in the servants' quarters on the third floor. When you push that button on the downstairs, it rang up where we were. But let's say it was 50% of that. If that were the case, then instead of the full $20,000, only 50% of that for that roof, because that's a shared expenditure, only 50% of that roof would qualify, which would be $10,000. And then we would have a 20% credit, or $2,000. If we had done work just in our property, then fine. In the part of the house that was ours, we could have got the full credit. But when you're doing it on the shared portion of the house, then it is something that is done by the percentage of what is in your income taxes. Again, that's a question A for your tax preparer or tax attorney, and also a question for Zach at the SHPO, or for calling us, and we can fill you in more on how that is. Here's some other examples this is another example, rather, of a shared use property, but this is more typical of what happens in communities, especially in Western New York communities. And that is, it's a duplex with 2 flats. That's such a common thing in Buffalo, and Niagara Falls, and a lot of the other larger communities, that as they built up as manufacturing areas and they needed more housing for people, these 2-family homes were built. Well, this house that you're seeing here is one of Buffalo's famous dollar houses. A young man in his early 20s bought this house off the tax list for $1. It was scheduled to be demolished. You can see it on the left. It was kind of demolishing it itself at that point. And $125,000 later, you see what he did on the other side. And he continues to work on it today. That young man happens to be now in his mid-30s, and he's a partner at Preservation Studios. But you can see here's the interior work that was done in there. And just to give you an example of how he worked that out, he lived in the upstairs unit. So anything he did in the upstairs unit, he could get the homeowner credit on. But he also had the downstairs unit that he was renting. He could get commercial tax credits on that, which is a federal credit, not a state a credit that is there is a state commercial credit, but it is not the same as the homeowner one. So what he did is he split it, and his attorney fee was split in half. So half of it was for the homeowner, half of it was for the commercial use. Same thing for the porch, roof, and railing. The porch jambs only needed to be created in the commercial portion. So he wasn't able to claim that for homeowner, but he was able to claim it fully on his commercial. So you can see how this is done. Again, this is far more complicated than what you're going to be doing with just a straight homeowner credit. And I would encourage you that if you did have a property like this, a duplex, or something with another commercial use, an office or a store or whatever, that you contact a professional in order to have that advice that you're going to need with that. One more example that I'll give you, though, is a single family home. This is in the Elmwood Village in Buffalo. And the homeowner here, when she purchased the house, it was before the homeowner credit was available, and she had her windows restored. Did a really nice job on the windows, but she still had the original, not original to the house, but original when she bought it, triple track aluminum storm windows, which, like most people who have them, she hated. And so she wanted to replace them. But if you take a look at those windows, there's barely 2 windows there that are the same. So this was a very expensive project to have custom-made storm windows done for it. Cost her over $53,000, and this is several years ago. This was before everything jumped up in the pandemic. But she did the homeowner credit and was able to get the 20% back on that. She did this application almost completely herself. She's a good friend of mine. She called me, and the only question she had for me is, what style is my house? The rest of that she did all on her own. It went so well that I spoke to her recently, and she says, I'm doing another one. This is just such an easy thing to do. Why would I not do this? So the point here is that not only does your home qualify? Not only do things that are very expensive qualify, but it's easy to do the application yourself.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, to go over more on the application. So there is a part one and a part two, which will both be submitted together, again, prior to that work commencing on the building. And then your part three will be submitted after all of that work is completed. And then this is just an example of what you'll see when you go on the website. So you have that part one, part two. There are amendments if like something changes, and then a part three online. This is more of what the application looks like. Really easy, fillable, your name, contact information. And then on the right side here, this is where you'll be submitting your proposed work. So you'll include photos, a little description, existing conditions of that work being done. This can also be done online, on your computer, on an iPad, on a phone, or you can still, send it in via fax or email. So just to go over a little summary and recap of what we discussed today. So the building type we talked about today is the homeowner occupied and residential building. The National Register requirements, so it must be listed or included in a historic district. There are requirements for expenditures, so the minimum $5,000 and then 5% of that work being done on the exterior. Application, yes, there is a part one, part two, part three. Some fees associated with the application depending on the size of the project. And here are just a few other ones here on the screen for you to look at. But thank you, everyone. And we'll have some, questions, and we'll answer some questions, some contact information for Emily, Zach, and Tom. And then we can always go back if you have more specific questions within the presentation. And just one more slide. We do this almost every month. So there's ways to give. Emily can go over this a little bit more in depth. But volunteering, donations, memberships, kind of make this keep on going. So we think
Thanks, Haley. Yeah, no, we really appreciate it. Any way you can give to PBN is always put back into the community. If you love Buffalo, you love Niagara Falls, you love seeing our social media and sharing these workshops with your friends, it always takes resources and it takes a village. So anything in any way you can give is always appreciated at PBN. And thank you, Tom, Haley, and Zach, for joining us and giving your time today and expertise
Emily, I just
on this.
add something about PBN because I think it's important for people to know. I was fortunate to be able to be one of the founding board members of PBN, and I served as its executive director. Becoming a member of Preservation Buffalo Niagara allows you to be participating actively in saving buildings in your community. And I want to give you one concrete example in Buffalo, and that is Trico. The Trico building is now being used for residential, for commercial. That building was going to be demolished for a parking lot, and it was Preservation Buffalo Niagara that led that fight. If it had not been for PBN, that building would be gone. And I think that that's true of so many buildings in so many communities. So whichever community you're in, whether it is Buffalo or it is Greenport, Long Island, or some other community, if you have a historic preservation nonprofit that is active in your community, join it as a member, because your membership, number one, helps them, but number two, it helps you be a part of saving buildings in your community, and it keeps you informed. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to become a member of your local historic preservation organization. Thanks, Emily, for the time.
Tom, you're the best. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for PBN and preservation as a whole, too. We do have time for questions. So, if you have questions on the applications, on if one of your qualified rehab expenditures might get covered, Zach from SHPO is here, so he's the one that reviews these historic tax credit applications. So,
Hello.
really, you're getting it from the person who would know. So if you have anything, please type in the chat. If you need if you want to talk about it, you can always unmute and speak too. All right, Zach, you ready? You're up.
Yep. Yeah, let's go.
All right. So we have Cynthia came in with our first question. Are there restrictions on the type of materials used? For instance, hardwood for the exterior or manufactured wood for the floors? Oh, hardy board for the exterior, excuse me.
Yeah. So there's some restrictions on the materials, but we do try to be a little bit lenient. So the one material that we basically never approve is vinyl, because there is really no way to make vinyl look historic. It will always look like plastic. But yeah, we do encourage using real wood because that's always going to be the most authentic option. It's also going to be the most environmentally friendly option. But we do allow a lot of like composite, fiber cement materials. Um, we just ask that you choose a smooth option and not one with a raised grain texture because the raised grain makes it look more fake. So as long as it's smooth. And also, we started asking now that you make sure that the contractor is not going to replace the trim moldings because we have had incidents where they said, oh, we're going to replace the siding with, whatever product. And so they do that, but the contractor also removes all the decorative trim moldings on the house and replaces it with flat stock. And now there's all this detail that's lost and it looks like a new build. And that's not acceptable. We've actually had to deny the tax credit when that's happened. And we don't want to do that. So, yeah, please be very diligent about your choices and make sure the contractor is doing the right thing if you go for an option like that. But yeah, we can allow it.
That's actually a really great question on materials. And one of the really cool things about the historic tax credit, I think, is Buffalo does lead the charge in historic tax credit applications in New York State, outside of New York City, of course. But that makes me really proud because we're taking advantage of this program that, is put in place to care for our big old homes. So it's really exciting. We have a 1928 house in Tonawanda is it eligible to get on the historic register? Absolutely. It's one of those things that it's a very long and lengthy process to go through, James, but depending on your criteria and the house and if it meets those criterias, your house could be determined eligible or be listed on the National Register. If you have questions about that, I definitely suggest you reach out to Haley, Tom, myself, and we'll be able to talk you through that process.
I would
Yes.
like
And
to share
also,
that,
oh,
Emily,
sorry.
You're
before
getting everyone excited. You see how that happens? You mentioned National Register.
I just wanted to add that if there's a possibility that you are in a historic district or in a neighborhood that would qualify as a historic district, then it's much easier to get onto
Mhm.
the National Register than it is for an individual nomination. So, and your community can get grants from the Certified Local Government Program in order to do that. So that's one thing to look into. Zach, I'm sorry I interrupted you there.
No, that's all right. I was going to say my colleague Campbell Higgle, if you find Campbell's contact on the State Historic Preservation Office website, Campbell is the one who does the National Register nomination review. Whenever tax credit applications come in, Campbell's the one who verifies that the house is eligible because it's listed. So Campbell would be the one to contact.
And if you want to just reach out to really any one of us, we can get you in contact with Campbell if you need be to. Okay. I mean, now's as good as time as ever, Thomas. Thomas has a few questions once the others are done. I think it's your turn in line, Thomas, if
Hi,
you're.
how are you?
Hi, how are
Hi.
you?
I'm good. Yeah, a couple questions. I think I'm in a historic district. Back in 2016, I got a letter from Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation. They were listing it on registers of historic places. So is that the designation or one of the designations?
Yes. So any
I'm in,
building that is,
sorry to
yeah.
interrupt again. I'm in Prospect Hill District by the Peace Bridge.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so as long as you're contributing, that's the key word. If you're contributing to a district that is listed on the National Register or the state register, but effectively they're kind of the same. It's just like a separation of governments kind of issue. But yeah, National Register and or state register. And it
Okay.
has to be contributing.
Okay. And then so mine's kind of been an ongoing thing. My house had brick put it on it in the 60s in the front that they, like you said, removed a lot of the trim, the detail work, etc. So I actually had all that pulled off. I've been restoring the clapboard. My contractor's been actually rebuilding trim to match the rest of the house. Anyways, this has been a few years ongoing and is still ongoing. So I'm assuming there's no retro like back doing anything that's been done already, correct?
So there you can't go retro for any like the past tax year. For very recent work, we can review it. Of course, it is at the peril of whether or not it actually qualifies for the tax credit.
Right, right.
But for something that's recent, then you can submit it to us and we'll look
So,
at it.
so what would you say is recent, I guess?
Recent would be within the last tax year.
Okay,
I
so
would
for
say prob
2025.
Yeah, I would say probably yeah, mid 2025 probably.
Okay.
It's not we're not supposed to do that. So it's a gray area.
Yeah, I've
You're
probably spent
supposed to get
about
those
80
treatments.
grand so far the last several years.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and it's still ongoing. Okay, so then going forward, this is something obviously, like I said, that's been a long-standing project and is I'm hoping to get wrapped this year or next year. So being that it's already started, the current year is something that could potentially be still approved for the ongoing work.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, it would be just any expenditures that you make within this year.
Okay, perfect. I think that was my only two questions, really.
Those are
And
great
Thomas,
questions.
you're able to phase these projects out too. So like say you're finishing the exterior of your house, and then you have to move on to like an interior project. You can do them within, you can close out one project and start a new one. It doesn't all have to be done all together. Just make sure that that 5% is being done on the exterior. So like you could do like one side of your house or one elevation and then, something inside or whatever, however that
But
works.
yeah, I've probably replaced 50% of the siding on one side of the house already, and okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
definitely, definitely enough exterior work.
Yeah.
the phasing also helps because there's a maximum that you can claim in a single application. And so you don't want to claim any more than that maximum because then you're not going to be able to get the credit on that remainder. So
Gotcha.
if you have like a three or $400,000 project in front of you, phase it so that each time you're getting as much as you possibly can out of that, and then do the next phase. We never do them all at once anyway. Come on, I mean,
Right.
who has that level of money to be able to do a project like that all at once? But do that in that way you get full advantage of it. That building I'm working with, the apartment at 800 West Ferry, that's exactly what she's doing. She phased it so she could get different amounts, and as it was, her contractor wasn't able to do it all at once anyway.
Right. Okay. So then phasing it, you almost want to phase it into jobs or sections that are going to be around. What was that 20K mark?
So yeah, so the current maximum per tax cycle per year essentially is 25,000 of credit, which is for 125,000 of expenditures. It used to be twice that. It used to be 50,000 of credit. It went down. There's currently a bill in the legislature, I believe, to restore it back to
Yes,
the
there
previous
is.
amount. Yeah. I can't comment on the progress of that or
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen, but yeah, it is pending legislation.
So essentially, the cap for any given year is $125,000 of expenditures.
Right. For right
Okay.
now, that's what it is.
Okay. I don't think I would probably surpass that anyway. So, okay.
Yeah, and just one more note about the phasing is that when you submit an application to us, that opens the project in our system. And project for us is the entire scope of work that you have. It's not just one thing that you're doing. So you have the project and has individual like different everything that you're doing, whether it's completely unrelated tasks on the house, is within that project. And you, once that project's open, you can submit amendments to it if you need to make changes, and then you submit the last part, the part three, closes out that project for the tax year.
Okay.
So you want to do that parts one and two, and then part three cycle once each tax year. And that has to all be done in December. So basically, it has to be done within the calendar year, and closed out in the calendar year to be able to claim it on your taxes.
Okay. So I would essentially say like I'm doing I don't know, a siding project and then or opening the whole project for the house and then say I'm working on estimated amount of siding replacement and then I submit a secondary like what I'm planning to do. Like for example, exterior paint. I don't know if that's something that's covered or
Sure is.
Yeah, paint's covered. So anything that you're planning to do, you would just put it all in one application, and that would
okay.
open that project for us in our system with all of that work you're planning to do. So
And if
just
something else popped up, I can amend it or add to it, you're saying.
yes, you there
Got it.
we have an amendment form. There's no fee for amendment forms. You can submit as many as you need.
Okay. All right. Thank
And
you.
you'll get
I'll
a
stop
project number to use
taking
to
up
do
too
that.
many. I appreciate all
No,
the info.
those are great questions, Thomas. Thank you. And as a part on top of all of that, so you have to spend at least $5,000, right? If by chance you're not hitting that mark, you can keep your application open as long as you need in order to hit that mark. So if you don't do it in that tax year and it has to stay open to the following tax year, that's fine. You just can't claim the credit until that tax year, the year you shut it out at and with your part three.
Yeah, our applications never close automatically. They stay open until you submit part three, even if it's years down the line.
Okay. And you said for last year probably for the last 6 months, when would that like I know that would be get it in soon as possible, but like what would you say the deadline this year would be for that?
Sorry, the deadline for what?
For the last tax year, like you said probably possibly about the last 6 months of 2025.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, see, that's the tricky thing is,
I haven't filed my taxes yet. I did an extension, so
yeah, I would just send me an email with more details about that because
okay.
again, this is tricky. We're not supposed to approve work that's already been done. Um, so I think we need to would
Okay.
want to discuss it among the office staff.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I do have a question from someone,
Mm-hmm.
Zach, hopefully. Okay, so they were approved for the tax credit from New York State. They are listed as eligible or listed within a historic district, and they already have work scheduled. They just asked us to calculate how much of the house is used for business versus personal. So they have a few home offices in their business within their home. So they have a percentage that they live in, but they also have a percentage, and they're trying to think of would they qualify for a commercial tax credit, or are they able just to claim it all under one since they're not paying themselves rent?
So uh okay, I'm trying to figure out where to start with that one.
Yeah.
So, the commercial tax credit has a pretty high bar. You have to spend a lot of money. It's the adjusted basis, and
Right.
I forget off the top of my head how to calculate it because I don't work with the adjusted basis for the homeowner program. But it's based on the value of the house, and it's a lot of money. So most residential projects are just not going to have a renovation so large that they meet the minimum expenditure for the commercial credit. That almost never happens.
Yeah, if you're not getting rent, then would it even be an income producing property at that point or just homeowner?
So if you're running a business, it's an income producing property. Or
Okay.
if you're using it for an office purpose. If it's an office purpose, but it's not your own business, I'm not sure. That's the kind of question that you'd want to ask an accountant.
Okay.
So we're architectural historians, we're not accountants. So sometimes we can't answer personalized tax questions. So
Okay.
that's the kind of thing that you should really talk to your accountant about.
Thank you, Zach, for the clarification.
Hmm.
We had a question from Roselle that kind of is about formatting. I had a question when filling out the application. If you have a long list of repairs, do you submit it all, even if the work won't be done in the same year, or do you need to fill out two different applications, one for each year the work is done?
Yeah.
Now you can go ahead and put everything that you're planning to do in one application. In order to close out part three to get the credit for that tax year, everything that's on part three needs to be finished, but it doesn't have to be everything that you're planning to do. So if you were going to paint your house and fix the porch, for example, and you want to close out and you did paint the house, but you haven't fixed the porch, then you can close out part three with just the painting of the house.
Okay.
And then you would need to submit a new part one and two application in the new year with the rest of the work.
Okay. Thank you. And did you want to ask your part two, Roselle?
I'm just rereading what my part two was. Uh, oh yeah. So before I fill in the application, are you asking also to submit estimates? Like, do we have to go get, the person that's the contractor and then have them give us an overview or whatever it is and an approximate cost? Because once you start ripping siding off, you never know how far how much of it is rotted and how much they're going to start ripping off. The same with my roofs. So do you need to submit that first?
Yeah, so we do need estimates with the application, but they don't need to be very exact. They're mainly just to make sure that the project is going to meet the minimum so that we can flag it if, there's a chance that it might not, for example. Um, but like, it's not very important if the costs end up ballooning for whatever reason. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
Right.
But if the final cost ends up being way off from what the estimate was, we're not really gonna say anything about it unless it's really suspicious for some reason. It's just not something that, is ever really a problem.
Okay. And if I could, one more question.
Sure.
I'm interested in, I would love to keep my original windows. The house is 1867. Um, so I love my windows, but I would like to get the aluminum that the gentleman before spoke about, the aluminum three tracks off of my windows. And I also have like windows with a semi, a curve up on the top, which in the 1970s, they stuck a filler in there with a piece of wood and all the storm windows go straight across as opposed to the curve, following the actual curve of the window. I had trouble trying to find. Um, I'm on this house guy blog and all these kind of things, but having trouble in New York finding somebody who does antique storm windows, to the antique windows and storm replacement windows. And then I found a company that was recommended, but then there's nobody around that has the actual windows, so you can actually go and see them unless I jump on a plane and go somewhere. So, do we have any, like in New York State or in New York or down on Long
Mhm.
Island, close to Manhattan, any storm window people?
Yeah, you don't even have to go that far, Roselle. I've got you. We have some really good window restoration and window people in Western New York, from Medina to Buffalo, pretty much, and around. So I have a contractor list, and that's for anybody that's getting any type of work done. PBN does have a vetted contractor list that we are always happy to supply anybody with. And it's people we've worked with, and we hope will continue to do good work in the future. So at the very end, after all of this, like, give me some grace until tomorrow. I will send out an email with a bunch of links, how to get to the SHPO application, preservation briefs in case you're doing work yourself. I'll include the contractor list to all of you guys, and then our contact information so you can reach out if you need anything. So, yeah, we'll make sure you get some good names there.
Great, thank you.
You're very
That's
welcome.
it. That's it.
Those are great. Okay, Chris had a question. Can you submit more than one application in a calendar year if you have another round of work that you decide to do later in the year?
So you're not supposed to. I think if the tax form for claiming the credit does have space to write in two project numbers. So I don't think it's a big deal if you end up doing that. But for administrative reasons, we strongly recommend just sticking to one application cycle per year.
So you can just keep it open, right? Like, I mean, you don't close it out. You think you're done with your project, then you like wake up the next morning and you're like, I really should have done that wall. Just keep it open. It doesn't
Yeah,
hurt.
yeah. You have the month of December to submit. The application the part threes do need to be in by, like we encourage early December because of that rush, but they have to be in by December. So if you're done with your project in July, but you're not sure, you might have something else you want to do, then just keep it open for now, then. And you can use an amendment form to add another bit of work that you want to do, and then you can close all that out in December.
Hey, Megan had a question. Our home is in Elmwood Village West, built 1900, original wood siding and details, etc. What does it mean to be a contributing home to that district? Oh boy, you're gonna get
Yeah.
us all excited, Megan.
Yeah, well, so the district is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And being contributing means essentially that you are also listed in the National Register of Historic Places as part of that district. So that's all it means. If you're not contributing, then you're not part of the National Register, basically.
And most of the houses are continuing. Like there's most of these boundary lines, they don't like gaps or holes within them of non-historic clumps within. So they're generally really tight neighborhoods. If you're unsure, you can always email Haley or myself or even Zach and find out if your house is listed. But it's, these contributing homes are what are the fabric of these neighborhoods. They're the reason why it's a historic district because there's so many special pieces within that district that make it architecturally unique. So it's really a big deal, I think, being a contributing structure to a historic district.
And if you are a contributing structure, you are on the National Register. That's what that means.
There is some cases where if you're in a local historic district, so we do have certified local historic districts like Linwood, which it's the benefits of what Tom was talking about earlier with the added benefit of being able to get those historic tax credits. So the homes on Linwood may not be listed on the National Register. They're all locally listed on our local register, but they still get those tax credits. So there are some times, but in almost all the cases, all the other cases, yeah, you're listed on the National Register. Okay, and we have Thomas. One other, if a property is zoned as a 2-unit, but now is being used as a single unit, does that matter? Would it have to get rezoned?
No, the zoning doesn't matter because that's just a local issue. It's not really concerning the state. As long as the entire house you claim on your taxes, it's about most of this is going to be about what you claim on your taxes, but as long as on your taxes you occupy the entire house as your private residence, then you don't need to worry about any of the like owner occupy or the income producing or prorating or any of that kind of stuff.
The example that I gave you with the storm windows, that was built as a two-family house, two very large flats, but a single family occupies that. And so they qualified for the full homeowner credit because it is owned by a single family and occupied by a single family.
Well, these were such great questions this evening, everybody. Like this makes me really happy because you asked something it could help somebody else. And, a lot of these projects are very different, but navigating the historic tax credit world is the same. So thank you so much for opening up and asking your questions about your homes and your projects and curiosity. I will definitely send a follow-up email after this, and I'm going to try really hard to get Zoom set up before I send out that email. So there will be a copy of this, a recorded copy of this workshop available on YouTube, and we'll make sure you get the application links. And there's a lot of really great flyers on the SHPO website. So if you need guidance on how to actually do the applications, there are step-by-step flyers for you, which I will also attach to the email. So you'll be set to go. Face your construction season strong. Get your historic tax credits.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for our panelists for speaking. You guys are wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you
Emily.
very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.